Welcome to the Eternal Insiders podcast, episode 007.
007, it's very appropriate, isn't it?
With your host for the day, me, Cam O'Neill, and my co-promoter, Ben Vickers.
Yeah.
I even managed to point correctly the right way without practice before we went live.
You did. Do you know what, though? I think we're not giving our viewers enough credit because there's only two of us here. So if you're talking, they're going to know who the other one is, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
I just thought about that as I was thinking about which way we needed to point.
Anyway, we're on to episode 7. As you can see, we don't have a guest this week, similar to last week when Ben decided to question me about the origins of my foray into promoting in Australia. And now we're just going to put him in the spot and find out all about Mr. Vickers.
Oh, dear. Strap in.
We'll kick it off. I'll just hand straight over to you. You can be the face. You've got the sunlight in the background. I'm sitting here in the dark spot. So, when did you come to Australia? And let's work backwards from there, and then we'll come back to where you were in Australia when you got here and work forward from there.
So I came to Australia full time. I actually left the UK on April Fool's Day in 2012.
Seems appropriate, really.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. One country lost a fool and one country gained one. But I'd been out for 6 or 7 weeks opening the gym before that, and then I had to go back. Initially, it wasn't for me to open. Like, it wasn't my gym. I was just helping out.
Right. Let's skip back a little bit because a couple of people maybe listen to this and not know what you're meaning about with the gym. So you moved out here from the UK to be involved in a gym that was opening in Perth, Western Australia. So let's give us a background on that.
Okay, yeah. So in 2008 in London, we opened the first MMA clinic in a place called Angel, which is where I happen to live. I didn't open it, but I was part of the opening team. Like, it wasn't my gym. I just was one of the coaches there and training out of there and personal training as well. So I ran, so my day-to-day life was in that gym in some facet or another. And then the powers that be there decided to open a gym in Australia. They had a connection in Perth. So it was worked out that they'd open a gym in Perth. And I put my name in the hat to go and run it. I was like, I'd be super keen to get over there and run it. But in the end, I didn't get the job. So they gave it to someone else. So, but they still asked me to go over there and open it because the fella that they'd given the job to had to put notice in. He had a real job. Alan Love, his name is. He's quite well known in the UK MMA scene back in the day. He's an MMA fighter. He's now a BJJ black belt and predominantly competes in BJJ. But he had a proper job and was given notice on that. So I went over to Perth and opened the gym towards the end of the year, sort of. I think I went in November, then I flew back just before Christmas. Like, I arrived back in the UK before Christmas, and then in that 3 months or whatever it was, I was back in the UK. I decided that it was shit and I wanted to go back to Australia. So I tried to make that happen, and we worked on a way where I could get out there and full time, and got me on a visa and temporary visa to start with. And I was just the boxing coach. So it was beautiful. I worked 12 hours a week plus PT, did a little bit of stuff around the gym, and then for the most part played golf and went surfing. So it was like a little career break almost. I loved it. It was fantastic.
That's the kind of life we all moved to Australia for.
Yeah, it didn't last long.
It quickly changes. I mean, when I moved here in 2005, I think I took 4 months off as well and done nothing but go out for dinner and go drives because I couldn't believe how cheap the petrol was. I just wanted to I just wanted to use as much of it as possible.
That's so Scottish.
And we were getting nearly $4 to the pound back then as well. And,
Yeah.
And get out for lunch and get out for dinner was very cheap. So I thought I'll take advantage of a few months off. So you must have felt the same moving from London, where it's extremely expensive to do anything.
Yeah.
To Perth in 2008.
I mean, Perth's pretty expensive. I've always, like, luckily I'm from London. Otherwise, I might have got a culture shock when I come here, because it's pretty expensive, Perth. Because it's like a mining town with no mines, because everyone flies in and flies out. So especially back when I moved here, it was part of the boom. So everyone had a decent amount of money, and they weren't afraid to throw it around. But obviously then the prices reflected that. So if you weren't earning the mining money, it was difficult. But then I was a single man. My accommodation was taken care of. So I was only had myself to look after. So I did have a good time in that first period over here.
So you went back to UK for Christmas?
Yeah, well, it wasn't. I still had like all my stuff, my house. I had a dog, you know. Still had a lot to sort out, and it wasn't. I had never came with the intention of staying the first time, but I just loved it so much. Loved the gym, loved the people, loved the vibe around Perth. I liked the fact it was pretty quiet compared to London, which was mental all the time. So yeah, I kind of got it into my head that that's what I wanted to do. And anyone that knows me knows once I get something in my mind and I make my mind up, it generally happens, whether it works or not. That's another story. But I'll make it happen and I'll have a shot.
So when did you come back out here? 2009?
No, 2000. That was 2011, and then I come full time April 2012.
Right.
So yeah, that was my my lead up to sort of moving out here full time, and I got lucky in that, I guess, that I got to have a trial first.
Yeah. And then you inherited the gym.
Then I what? Sorry.
Inherited the gym. The head coach position.
Yeah, I can't go into too much detail because a lot of shit happened like around the gym and the ownership of the gym and stuff like that.
No, we've been around about, interrupted your golf career and your 12-hour week, and you had to take over the head coach position. And
not only head coach, I mean, that was easy. Like, I don't have an issue with that. But I had to run the gym. And the fella that was running the gym before me, for whatever reason that I can't go into, was unable to run the gym anymore. And there was no one else to do it. Now, the problem with that is I've never ran anything other than a bath in my life. So, like, I didn't know what to do. I was just making it up as I went along. So bills would come in, I'd try and pay them. People would want paid. No one had ever shown me any of the procedures. So it's like the conversation we had with Eric. It's like failure after failure and mistake after mistake. But eventually you don't make them anymore, and they're fewer and further between. And you just figure it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just figured it out. It's not rocket science. So yeah, I did. I ended up running the gym. I can't remember exactly when. But yeah, I ended up having an ownership stake and running the gym. Shortly after arriving here, it wouldn't have been more than a year. I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, I'm thinking it was probably around about start of 2012, maybe.
Well, that's when I moved here, 2012, so full time. So maybe start of 2013.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you want to do? Do you want to move forward, or do you want to go back and give your history before you got here?
Well, either, yeah. So I guess better off starting further back and then getting towards the present day would work well. Yeah. But you're the boss, mate, so I'll do it whatever way you like.
What was that? Sorry, I missed that.
I said you're the boss, so we'll do it whatever way you like.
Okay, let's go from the beginning. How did you? I think your first proper foray into combat sports would have been boxing in the army.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get back.
Yeah, I've always liked fighting, so I wanted to do it in some way, shape, or form without getting in trouble for it. I don't know why boxing had always fascinated me. I was always into it, and I always wanted to do it. And I went to great lengths to do it because none of my family was into it. I'm very different, as you know. I'm very different to my family. I didn't come up the same way as they all came up. I'm fortunate enough to come from like a very solid, straight down the line. Like I had a really nice family. I've got a really good family. I don't know what happened to me. I just went a bit wonky and decided to go my own way and make my own path. So yeah, I was always like, I don't like the word black sheep, but it's kind of appropriate. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I was always the one that was looking for other ways to entertain myself in the traditional ways, should we say. So and that didn't really fit in with anyone else, but it was just me. It was just who I was, and it's sort of what I gravitated to. So boxing was a part of that. Like I loved the scene. I loved the training. I loved the violence. I loved everything about it. And before I joined the army, I just found this little boxing class. It wasn't even a boxing club. It was a boxing class, which I used to go to 2 or 3 times a week. And I just loved it from the very first second of walking into a boxing class to today. I've just got this love for boxing. I absolutely love it. And that was instantaneous. I didn't grow into it. I loved everything about it from day one. So I knew that I wanted to do that. And then obviously I joined the army young at 16 and I was a small kid. I'm a small adult, so it's not surprising that I was a small kid, but I was probably like 55 or 56 kilos when I joined the army. So I didn't even need to volunteer for boxing. They said, anyone who wants to box, put your hand up. And if you're under 60 kilos, step forward. So you didn't really have a choice. If you were the small guy, you were boxing anyway, but it was brilliant. Like when we did our inter-company boxing, so like the inter-regimental stuff, so all fighting against your own regiment, but each company had their own team. So A company had a boxing team, B company had I was in C company boxing team. So when boxing fights were coming up, the boxing team got segregated from the rest of the company, and we just were full-time boxers. It was amazing. So like we train in the morning. First thing we go for our runs, and it was old school. Like I'm talking about running around in boots, bin bags on. We're not even cutting weight. I didn't even need to cut any weight. I started a bin bag on because it was just the way that they did it. We'd be running.
And you're in the UK, so it was fucking freezing. So that probably.
Yeah, I didn't mind too much. Kept the rain off. Yeah, we go out for booted runs in the mornings, and then into the gym for whatever we were doing. And then, so we'd have 2 sessions in the morning, lunch, and then a session in the afternoon. And then we got special meals prepared for us in the cookhouse, and we got to jump the queue because we had training, and it was great. It was brilliant. And it really sort of
celebrity status. You were getting the athlete treatment in the army.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, the army's always been great with that. If you do a sport for them, you get looked after. So they really encourage that side of things. So yeah, that was how that came about. And then I left the army and pursued boxing at an amateur boxing club, but I didn't like it. I didn't like because the army style, you can get away with having a brawl, taking a few shots and giving a few shots back. So I never really was, again, people will be surprised to hear I was never a super technical boxer. I was fit. I'd bite down on my mouthpiece and I'd just go for it. There wasn't too much technique flying around. And then you come out into the amateur boxing world, the traditional ABA style, and it is a sweet science. And I think the reason, and I'm glad it happened, it's probably the most important fight that I ever had, because I might never have left boxing if this fight didn't happen. But I remember I was fighting. I can't remember where it was or who I fought or anything. Amateur boxing was weird. You just rock up on the day and there's a match up for you, and you jump in.
You're lucky. You're lucky if there's a match up for you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you
Exactly.
get there and sit all day and not have a match.
Yeah. It was.
It can be very frustrating in amateurs like that.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. So I remember, but I trained really hard, and like I never didn't put the hours into my training. I've always been disciplined like that, and training's my hobby anyway, so I love doing it. So I trained really hard, and I was in this fight. I think it was the first round or early in the second, and I got hit with 3 jabs in a row. Nothing hard, literally just jabs. And the referee went, "Oh, standing 8 count, 3 unanswered shots." And I was like, "What are you talking about, mate?" and in the amateurs, they're really strict on communication with the referee. Like, you are literally not allowed to speak to the ref. So he gave me a standing 8 count, and then the round carried on, and I got caught with another couple of jabs, and he'd done it again. He was like, standing 8 count. And I said, "Mate, you were taking a piss. It's a jab. You're supposed to eat them." And then
you're not telling your boys that they're supposed to.
Yeah. So and in the end, I ended up getting stopped. I think I got another count, and that was it. I think it's 3 counts, and you're out at that level. So, and I was like, "Fuck this!" I just trained really hard for like 6-7 weeks to get ready for this fight, and you're not even gonna let me fight. So I was like, "Fuck boxing. I want to do something else." So I was looking around, and I found near to me in East London, in Hoxton Square, which is actually pretty posh now, there was a Jeet Kune Do place. I thought I'll give some martial arts a try. Like, I still want to fight. I hadn't even heard of the UFC or anything at this stage, really. I didn't know about MMA. And then on this, so Jeet Kune Do is Bruce Lee's martial art. I think it means something like someone's going to correct me, I'm sure, but I think it means find the way or find your own way or something like that. But it was a fusion of, well, we did Western boxing, Thai boxing, Filipino Kali, and then some sort of Wing Chun kind of stuff, and then a bit of grappling as well. I loved it. I thought it was really good. But there was no competitive outlet in Jeet Kune Do per se. So I said to one of the coaches, how do I compete? Like, I really want to compete. Like, I want to fight. Who can I, what? And he goes, "Oh, you've got a few options. You could box." I said, "No, I don't want to box. I've done a fair bit of boxing." He said, "You could do Thai boxing." I was like, "Yeah, that sounds all right." And then he went, "Oh, there's this thing called MMA. You could do that." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Oh, you fight on the ground, you fight standing up." And I said, "Well, which one's the most hardcore one?" And he goes, "Oh, I reckon MMA is the most hardcore." I said, "I'll do that then." And then that's how MMA came about. But obviously, the Jeet Kune Do place wasn't necessarily the right place to become an MMA fighter. I stayed there for a few years. I think probably till about 2007. So I stayed there for 3 years. I think it's 2004 when I started. I can't remember the timeline exactly, but I started grappling in 2004, but only private. So it wasn't a grappling class. There was no jiu-jitsu or anything like that. I was just doing private. So I didn't have a gi. We were just doing like no gi stuff. And then I was doing the Thai boxing and the boxing. And then I joined the fire brigade in 2004. And I met a guy who I'm still very close friends with today. Him and his brother were both firemen as well. And one of them came to my fire station on an out duty. So he was sent from another fire station because we didn't have enough people. And we just got chatting, and he was really into MMA as well. And he trained at London Shoot Fighters, which for anyone who knows the UK MMA scene, it's probably the standout gym, or was at least.
Round about the years, it definitely was.
And he was training there. So I was like, "Oh, sick." He went, "Yeah, you should come down." So I went down there. That place was fucking insane. Like, going from Jeet Kune Do in Hoxton to MMA in, I can't remember where it was now, White City or something like that, like West London, under a railway arch. Like all the gyms in London tended to be under railway arches. It was the perfect sort of space. And they had 2 railway arches, and one had a big wrestling mat in it. And then the next door, they had a boxing ring and a cage. And I used to get my ass kicked. I was the smallest bloke, and I was the shittest grappler. So it was a fucking bad time for me. Like every time was a bad time. And we used to literally fight for our lives every day in there. It was horrendous, like good and bad.
I think that was. I think a lot of the fighters that come out of there around about that time, that was the kind of culture that gym must have had as well. We were all tough guys that were definitely lads about town.
Yeah, but culture comes from the top, I found. So that's what the coaches were about. And then that's what everyone else became about. And that's sort of what was expected of you. You know, there was no backward steps taken in there. You know, and back in them days, you know, I could tell you some stories, I won't. But, you know, people were getting hurt badly in there. I mean, badly. But it was part, you know, it was what it was. And that's what the sport was back then. Only the strongest survived. And that is literally what you got. So I thank it for that, because you find out whether you're tough or not if you can keep going to them places and taking your kickings. But it would turn into fights sometimes. Like I was grappling with this kid and I didn't know how to grapple. So I was clumsy and I kept kicking him with my feet, like as he was, I didn't know what I was doing. So, and he got really angry at one point. I must have clipped him one time too many, as I was scrabbling around like an upturned turtle, not knowing what the fuck I was doing. And he passed my guard, and I remember he pushed all his weight onto me. He levered his knee up, and he kneed me right in the body, like as hard as he could. And we were only grappling. So I was like, what the fuck are you doing? I stood up, and we just started fighting, like on the mats. And then they came over and separated us. But no one gave a fuck about me in that gym, if you weren't in the clique, in their like clique, then you weren't getting any attention paid to you. So that's just how it was. And then I had a fight. Like I organised myself a fight because I knew that they wouldn't let me fight, but I wanted to fight. So I organised a fight for myself. And my mate who I went there with, Rich Mitchell, he's now one of the best referees in the game. He's one of the main referees for Cage Warriors now. He said, why don't you tell Alexis that you've got a fight coming up? And I was like, I'm not sure about that. And he goes, no, why don't you tell him? And he might like spend a bit of time with you and, you know, help you. So I said, all right, I trust Rich, you know. He never steered me too wrong in my life. So next time I was in training, I goes, oh, Alexi, I've got a fight coming up. He went, what the fuck are you doing fighting? You're not ready to fight. You ain't representing this fucking gym. I was like, no. It's just an independent fight. I'm just doing it for myself. But Rich thought it'd be a good idea if I let you know. He said, you might give me some pointers or something. He was like, fuck off. You ain't ready to fight. So I went away and had the fight anyway. And I won.
Well, there you go.
I won by triangle.
Just think how not ready the other guy must have been.
Yeah, I know. Back then, people didn't really know. It was still like one discipline. Most people were one discipline, you know, and this guy was a stand-up guy, which I was too. But Rich Mitchell was a good grappler, and we spent a lot of the time while we were down in Western-super-Mare. We had to drive down for these fights, and spent a lot of the time working triangles and arm bars with me off my back. And I just so happened to end up in a triangle position. Like I think I got slammed. I had my legs around his head because on the ground I went for an arm bar and he lifted me up and he slammed me down and just ended up in a triangle position. And I'll always remember it really clearly. Is the opposition corner. It was in his corner. And his corner were like coaching him out of the triangle, but I just reversed everything that they said.
And the opposite.
And ended up finishing it. And I remember the people in the crowd, like I went into the crowd afterwards to watch the rest of the fights, and people were like, what was that you just did? No one knew what the fuck it was. Like that was what MMA was back then.
Yeah.
It was like 2005, 2006. So yeah, it was pretty crazy experience. But yeah, I never went back to London Shoot after that.
That whole thing just reminded me of when I was around about 2004 as well, when I was kickboxing a lot. And I was down at training at Wasabama down in Ayr, which the guy who owned the Wasabama used to run events called Martial Mayhem. And there would be a hybrid event, there would be boxing, there would be kickboxing, there would be Thai boxing on the
yeah, that's my event was a hybrid event. It wasn't an MMA event. And
just round about 2004, he started adding some MMA fights onto it, and nobody knew what they were, at that point in time. That was to come to the show. Everyone was used to going there and watching Thai fights. And the MMA fights there, you would still get people fighting in gis. People would be fighting in gis in a ring there.
Yeah.
And I remember a couple of boys from our jiu-jitsu club was the Japanese jiu-jitsu club, were fighting on it. And I was pretty keen to fight, and I was like, fuck it, I'll fight on it. And my coach at the time, Tommy, was like, yeah, we'll get you a fight, no bother and all that. And I says, will I get paid? How much money will I get? Because I was thinking, surely I'm going to get paid for this. And I used to run the security at the shows.
Yeah.
Security Thai, that was a thing. And so we used to run security at the shows, which was pretty good. And I made about $50 or £50 doing that. And then they told me that, no, you won't get paid. I'll maybe get you a sponsor and you'll get a set of gloves. I was like, if I just do security, I'll still get a fight, but I'll get paid for it as well. In fact, I might do 2 fights. But on that show, the first guy who walked out for an MMA fight on it was one of the boys from our club, and he walked out with a gi on, and the whole crowd was like, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? What are these guys doing? And then as soon as they started wrestling, rolling about in the canvas and the ring, you could, that the whole atmosphere in the place changed. It was like, what the fuck are these guys doing?
Yeah. Yeah, it was like that back then. I mean, I remember, like I had one good story from London Shoot was, we were always in the wrestling room because that was the main thing, was the grappling for us, like Muppets. We were always like doing the grappling. And then one day we went next door to do some boxing. And Paul, I remember Paul, he was like, if Alexi was bad cop, Paul was good cop, he was always a bit mellower and like Alexi was always ready to go. Like, I have nothing against him. I think he's a great guy. It was just, he was a hardcore, old school fucking trainer, and that's how he'd been taught. And again, that's what he passed on. But Paul was a bit more mellow. And although like he was the wrestling coach or one of the wrestlers, but just a real knowledgeable, like technical guy. Not that Alexi wasn't, but Paul was always a little bit nicer. And Paul went, put the headgear on me, stood me in the ring, and then I heard him across in the other corner, and he went, "Go easy on him, yeah," to the fella that I was going to box. And I was like, fuck that. Like, this is my world now. I'm all right here. And I fucked this guy up. Like, I smashed him all around the fucking ring. And Paul stopped the fight and like took us out. He took me back to the corner, called someone else in. And then he come over to me and he went, "Ben, be careful with him this time." It was funny, like, it was just funny, the momentum. So yeah, that was pretty good memory from. I had some good memories from there. Like, much as I didn't like the vibe, it was top level coaching. Like, it's the best coaching you could have received, and I still use a lot of their shit to this day. And I'm very grateful for those couple of years that I spent in there. Just it was just hard. It was just a hard place to get your head around.
A lot of the top fighters in the UK and European scene were coming out of there at that time.
Yeah, Zaromskis was in there training when I was training. I was in there one day just after Lee Murray. If you don't know who Lee Murray is, look him up. But he's a mad bastard. I think it was 5 weeks after he'd had open heart surgery because someone had stabbed him outside a nightclub. He was back in there rolling 5 weeks after I was in there. There was some Alex Reed. He's a UK MMA sort of veteran.
Of course, they two ended up having a bit of rivalry as well.
Yeah, there was some. So there were some top guys. I mean, you were surrounded by some of the best guys going around. So yeah, the baptism of fire, but it was good. I don't regret it at all. And then, so from there, how did I end up? Pancrase, London. So my next stop was Pancrase, London, which was Jess Loudon's gym. So he wouldn't have been big over here, I wouldn't have thought. But in the UK, Jess was one of the pioneers of UK MMA, and actually ended up getting into the UFC as one of the first in that era to get signed by the UFC. Fought in UFC 75, I believe, in London, beating Dennis Seaver. He armbarred Dennis Seaver in 75 seconds or something like that. It's a really good grappler.
Yeah, it must have been, because Dennis Seaver would have tiny little arms.
Oh, mate. Yeah, he did. Well, Jess, I think Jess was a phenomenal kickboxer as well. So I think Jess kicked him in the head a couple of times, and then Dennis took him down, and Jess armbarred him pretty handily. It was light work for Jess. It's funny to see Dennis Seaver to go on to do great things in the UFC, and unfortunately Jess lost a couple of fights. He got knocked out badly in Newcastle by Marcus Davis, but he was a great coach, another no-nonsense guy. But more importantly, from the Pancrase London days, I met a guy called Paul Hines, or Grandad as I like to call him, because when I met him, he was younger than I am now, but I thought he was the oldest man in the world. But he's a fucking legend of a bloke. And that's where the MMA clinic came about. So I was trained with Paul at Pancrase London for a year in this fucking horrible railway arch. Next door to the railway arch was a mosque. The next railway arch down was a mosque. And then the one on the other side of us was like a fetish club. So if you went on a Saturday morning for training, there'd be people spilling out of the fetish club. And then there'd be all the people going to prayer, like all the Muslim people going to prayer. And then there'd just be these lunatics in the middle beating the shit out of each other. It was fucking brilliant. But that place was like run down. Like we just had one big red mat and that was it. And one punch bag hanging up on the wall. And a couple of showers, and that was it. That was all that was in there. And that was a war zone as well. I mean, I think that was just how most gyms were back in the day. I think that it just went off every time. You know, we do 2 hours a night back to back. So it'd be an hour striking and an hour's grappling back to back. And always finishing with sparring. Yeah, some of the scraps I had in there. I remember like getting double legged and hitting this plug socket and it come off the wall and it electrocuted me. It was like, and then the rat died underneath the mat and it stank the whole place out. We couldn't get it right in the middle. No one could get it. So like we just had to put up with this smell for fucking months. But then there was a few guys. Nick Azipchak was in there. He went on to fight on the Ultimate Fighter. A guy who just fought on the Ultimate Fighter, the Smashes series, Australia versus the UK. Luke Newman, he was in there as well. They had a good team, like a lot of good fighters. Brad Pickett used to come down every now and again for sparring. So we had some good wars in there. And again, I learned a lot in that place. And Paul's, you know, I ended up working with Paul and being Paul's right-hand man in the MMA clinic. And I've learned most of what I know of Paul, truthfully told. So the path that led Paul and I, and funnily enough, Paul was London Shoot Fighters like way back in the day as well. So yeah, the path that led me to Paul was probably like really important for me becoming the sort of the coach that I am today. I got most of that from Paul. So I'm extremely grateful for Paul. And bumping into him. But not only did Paul was the first bloke probably ever in my life to give a fuck. Do you know what I mean? Other outside of my family. Do you know what I mean? Like he really invested a lot of time in me. You know, whether it was like trying to keep me on the straight and narrow, or making sure that I was getting to training. You know, he invested a lot of time and effort into me. And no one had ever really, outside of my sort of circle, no one had ever really shown me that before. So yeah, it was massive. Paul has a huge role to play in my life, not going bad, or continuing to go bad. So I'll be forever grateful for that man.
So then, so you left Pancreas,
and that's when Jess went to train with Joe Daddy Stevenson in the States. He went to Team Quest for a bit with Henderson and Sokaju and Linland and all those guys. Came back from there and then really wanted to have a crack at his UFC career. So moved over to Cobra Kai, I think, in Joe Daddy's gym in California. I think it was in California. So he wanted to shut the gym down because he just wasn't around anymore. So Paul, there's like one of those sliding doors moments where there's this fella called Graham Boylan. Everyone probably knows who he is now if you follow MMA closely. He's the CEO of Cage Warriors. He's also the CEO of the MMA clinic. But Jess had been training him, like PTing him, and he wanted to carry on PTing. And Paul was really busy. Like, Paul has always been a grafter and always had PTs like back to back to back all day. He'd do like 12 hours PT straight without a break. He just loves money. He's got a big pile of money. If you could ever find out where Paul Hines lives, go in his house. He might kill you, but if you can get past him, you'll end up with a lot of money because it's under his bed.
It's under his bed.
He's got a bad back, so he has to sleep like that because it's all on his side as well. He won't let his missus have any. So he's all fucking punched up. So,
I hope he watches this, buddy.
I'll fucking make sure he does. I'll send it to him. So Jess gave Paul this scrap of paper and said, "Oh, this guy wants some PT." And Paul looked at it and went, "Oh, who the fuck's that?" and threw it in the bin. And he says to this day, he doesn't know what made him go and get that number out of the bin and ring the guy. But he did. And it ended up being Graham Boylan. So Paul started training him. And then at the time, Graham was running boxing classes in a gym in Covent Garden, which is like right in the heart of London, pretty corporate. And he was getting busy and he needed some help. So Paul was teaching some of these classes and then he needed some help. So he wrote me into it. So I teach a couple of classes a week, boxing, down at Covent Garden. And then obviously got to know Graham. And Graham was like, I want to open my own gym. Like, I'm sick of teaching in someone else's gym. So we were obviously all on board. And that was the birth of the MMA clinic there. So in 2008 in Angel, an 8-minute walk from my front door, we opened this MMA gym, which was just fantastic. And the times, like, that's probably some of my fondest memories of my whole life have been in that place. You know, like, just the team we had. It was just great. Like, I worked there every day, like training. I trained there. I did all my PTs there. I didn't really do anything else. I just went there, went home, and went out on the piss because it was on the middle of the high street in Islington, which is a kilometre or probably even a couple of kilometres of just pubs and restaurants. And the gym was smack bang in the middle of it. So, you know, we'd finish training on a Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday, and we just hit the pub straight afterwards. And God knows what happened after that. So, yeah, that was the MMA clinic. And then that kind of, towards 2011, that was when the Australia one started. So that was when we ended up. I ended up out here.
So let's get forward to you're out in Australia.
So yeah, Australia, like, I was literally living my best life when I first moved here. I quit drink as well. New Year's Eve 2012, I raised the glass. My parents were over, and a good mate of mine from Canada was over, and I don't know why. I hadn't even really thought, well, I do know why, because I'm a fucking idiot when I drink, but I don't know what prompted me to make that call there and then. But I just had this moment, and I was just like, you know what? This is fucking shit. I'm not doing this anymore. I had a glass of champagne. It was midnight, and I went, this is the last drink I will ever drink. And I drank it, and I've never had another drop since.
There you go. It's going well.
So I think it was, I think what drove me to it was there was an incident. It's all Daniel Williams' fault. We had the gym Christmas party. Mark Fury was over as well. So I'll go back to him in a minute, because between him and Paul Hines, they're probably the two most pivotal figures. But Fury was over. For those of you that don't know Mark Fury, he was Matt Hughes' wrestling coach. Robbie Lawler's... sorry, he wasn't a wrestling coach. He was an MMA coach. He'll kill me for saying wrestling coach. Robbie Lawler's Robbie Lawler's MMA coach. Matt Hughes' MMA coach. Raquel Pennington's MMA. Like, he's had a Brian Foster. There's just been I think he's cornered 135 UFC fights, Fury. He's just... No one really knows him these days because he dropped out the game for a little while. But he's another man that I've been lucky to learn from on a few occasions now. But he was over for a seminar, and after his seminar, we had it was around Christmas time. We had a big Christmas drink up with the gym, and my brother was over as well at that time. So we all got pissed, and funnily enough, before this incident happened, Fury had just left, and my brother had just left. A lot of people were thinning out. It was late now. We'd been going since the afternoon, and it was getting late. It was probably like midnight, and there were these big Maori fellas like following me and Daniel Williams around the pub, and they just kept like saying things, and then at one point, Minnie T went across to get Macca's, like he was hungry, and the Macca's was next door to the pub. And then one of them followed him down there and was giving him shit in Macca's. And he'd come back. We sat down. He picked his beer up and he went, fuck this, I've had enough. I was like, all right, mate, do what you got to do. I'm with you. So he's gone over to this one Maori and he's gone, me and you outside now. We'll do it. Just me and you. Don't let your mates get involved. We'll have it. And bear in mind, me and Daniel are probably the two smallest fellas in the pub at this point.
Probably 6 foot between the two of you.
Yeah. And these Maori fellas like that. Right. So they've gone outside and we'd been drinking all day. Obviously, you can be whatever you want to be as a fighter, but if you can barely stand up, it's pretty hard to fight. So it was a mess, but it ended up Daniel got knocked out by this Maori fella. And then they all started piling in. So I stood over Daniel's head, like I ran into the middle, stood either side of Daniel's head, and I was like, stop, this is fucking... They were kicking him. And next thing you know, I must have got cracked in the back of the head because I was unconscious. Now, I've never been knocked out before. But I don't remember anything. I woke up in an ambulance. And someone had told me that if you got an ambulance in Australia, you had to pay for it. Because in the UK, it's free. So I was like, I saw the ambulance crew and I said, oh, I've had to pay for this ambulance. And they went, oh, not yet. So I just fucking jumped out. I ran off. I don't think they've done anything to me yet. But at that point, Daniel had gone. And what happened was, no one got involved. No one helped us. Like, it was just me and Dan against the world. And I think that prompted me to realise that, one, I'm on a temporary visa in Australia, and if I get into too much trouble, they'll just send me home because they don't need any more dickheads here. And two, I don't have the same group of people around me that I did back home because I was new to the country that are going to be there and have my back. You know, or stop me getting into these situations in the first place, which is what a lot of my friends did throughout my wilder years. So I think I put those things together, and I was like, you know what, this drinking is not gonna serve me well over here. I'm not in my comfort zone. I'm not with my people. So it's probably best just left alone. It's probably the most responsible thing I've ever done. But
you're doing well with it as well. That's 8 years ago, or 7 or 8 years ago now.
7.5 years, yeah. 7.5 years. Do you know what? I don't miss it. I don't miss it in the slightest. I wonder why I ever fucking done it. Because it never led to anything but headaches, fucking brokenness, and drama. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. So that was probably why I quit drinking. But I never made a conscious decision. It just came to me at that moment, and I had the glass of champagne in my hand, and I just done it. And yeah, like you say, we're still going strong to this day. So,
and look, if you've came this long and the age that you are now, and your family situation, I don't think you'll ever go back to having a drink now.
I don't see myself going back there. No, barring a major catastrophe. No, I don't miss it. There's nothing about alcohol that I miss.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like we discussed with Eric, sometimes it's nice to be in that chaos. I do like that in the moment, but then for days afterwards, I hate it. So, and the repercussions are pretty big. So yeah, I'll put that down. And how did we get on to drink?
I'm not really sure, to be honest.
But yeah,
I'm not really sure. I think it was going to telling a story about, you brought up Mark Fury, and then started that story about him being over for the seminar. You said you were going to go back to how you first met Mark, and
so Mark. Fury came over. Graham brought him over to teach us how to wrestle.
Another thing I'll go there is that for everybody else watching, he didn't even end up in that story. You got to the bit where you jumped out the ambulance and it went away. But your whole thing was, the fact that he was over from seminar.
But I remember that as the reason we were out was because Fury was out. Fury came over to the clinic, MMA clinic. Graham brought him over for a couple of weeks to teach us how to wrestle, because obviously in MMA you need to know how to wrestle, and obviously the UK is not renowned for its wrestling. Fortunately, Paul Hines had done a fair bit of wrestling, so with the London Shoot Boys and the people that he was with before, and Jess was a decent wrestler. So we had some sort of base, but we spent 5 hours a day for 2 weeks wrestling when Fury came over. Just learning and wrestling. That's when my ears went. And he's such a cunt that if you wear an ear guard in his class, he'll punch you in it. He's just that old school. But again, so privileged and fortunate to have learned from a pioneer of MMA that is Fury, and to have a relation he's a brother to me now. He was over here for 5 weeks last year. He'll be back. He was due to be here right now, but obviously the world's closed, so he's not here. But he'll be back as soon as I can get him back. He's a big part of my plans, because the fundamentals. He's into fundamentals, basics and the shit that works, and he's seen it, and he knows over the years, he's been doing it for that long, that he knows what works, he knows what doesn't, he knows what's worth wasting time on, he knows what's not worth wasting time on. And it's not even just the grappling side, even some of the striking stuff that he goes through, and some of the submissions and getting up from the ground and stuff that's not really traditionally jiu-jitsu. He's just phenomenal. His knowledge of MMA is up there with anyone's, and he's old school, so he brings that old school sort of blue collar mentality to it, which is what I really like. I have big plans for Fury, and anything I'm doing around MMA will have Fury involved in it in some way, shape or form, because I believe that the industry, he disappeared for a few years dealing with some of his own shit, and I believe the industry's worse without him in it.
Oh, when you look at the caliber of athlete that he's put in front of us.
Yeah, So yeah, about 2013, I'd knocked the booze on the head. I was running the gym, getting some fighters out. You know, the boys. I've always been lucky to have Eternal, and you've always looked after. Even before I was a part of it, I was always a part of it. I always felt like a part of it from day one. Rocking up with Josh Thompson.
I was going to say, well, you had Josh there.
So, but I think that's a credit to you and how you make people feel when they come from interstate. Like, I always felt welcome, and I always felt like I wasn't flown in for defeat. You know, like sometimes you can feel like that when you're brought interstate.
Yeah, and I think that's right across most combat sports. You know, I think just historically the way, you know, some promoters have got the fighters that they've got links with, that they're promoting or managing, and quite often they'll bring people over, you know, to lose to them.
Yeah.
As you know yourself now, you know, it's you know, it's not something we've ever done. We like 50-50s. You know, we like fights that are going to, you know, it's up to the individuals to elevate their status off the back of their performance and result. We just want the people sitting in the crowd to think, fuck, that was a good fight.
Yeah, I do remember my first ever MMA fight. In fact, the MMA Clinic's first ever MMA fight, my first MMA fight as a head coach of a gym, was on a hybrid show in a ring, and Josh Thompson again fought. Yeah. And he fought actually Luke Jones, who's actually gone on to become one of the best. That was at lightweight. There's two things about this fight that were incredible to me. One was that they didn't have a fucking clue what they were doing over here in terms of running MMA shows and officiating MMA shows. And the second one was I didn't realise Luke and Dan Jones were identical twins because I hadn't been at the weigh-ins. So after Josh had fought Luke, I went backstage and I was walking back out and I saw what I thought was Luke going out for another fight. And I was like, wow, but it was actually his brother. So that was interesting. But the fight itself, Josh dropped Luke in the first round and went to finish the fight. And the referee jumped in. So I'm like, to me, that's over, fight over. As soon as the referee lays his hands on a fighter. So I'm in the ring now. And the referee's going, get out of the ring. And I said, what are you fucking talking about, mate? The fight's over. Like, and then all the officials are in, get out of the ring, you'll be disqualified. I said, what are you fucking talking about? The fight's over. It's MMA, like it's done. No, standing 8 count. And I was just like, what? I don't understand what's going on here.
These standing 8 counts have been following you about since amateur boxing.
Oh, it's my fucking worst nightmare. But yeah, so basically, they didn't know the rules, whoever was running this event. And fortunately, when Josh ended up losing the fight, got submitted in the second round after knocking the guy out in the first. You work it out. But it actually got overturned to a no contest in the end. So the promoters did the right thing. Well, they didn't really, because strictly speaking, it should have been a win. But anyway, that was my first taste of. So luckily, you performed a bit better than they did on that show, and I was a bit more left with a bit of a better taste in my mouth after Eternal 1.
Yeah, that's fighters getting dropped and getting 8 counts. It's the first time I've ever actually heard of that when you told me that story.
Mate, it's incredible that could even happen. But there you go.
Oh, we've had some wild times in Western Australia with before the cage was introduced or reintroduced, and you know, we're physically pushing people back through the ropes, and
it was a roller coaster ride. But yeah, I guess so. Yeah, we just started fighting on the circuit and getting a few fights locally and getting my name out there as a coach, and then it's just blown up really. Yeah. From there.
Well, on Josh on Eternal 1, Ryan on Eternal 2. You know, so I think
Ryan was on 2, 3, and 4, and then or 2 and 3 at least, and then we dropped off for a little while, and then we got back on later on, and then I became part of Eternal, and yeah, we've never looked back really since then.
Yeah, so in MMA in Western Australia's picked its game up a little bit since then as well.
Yeah, definitely. There's and there's some good fighters here, man. Like it's a credit to the gyms, you know, that are doing it the right way here, because some of the fights we get to witness in Western Australia, from the first fight on the card to the last fight on the card, they're just, the skill level is great.
And the hunger as well, you know, the hunger and the desire to win that a lot of these boys go out there with, you know. You don't see it many other places, you know, they're fucking 110% into it out there, always have.
Yeah, so it's really positive here at the moment for MMA. I think it's a good spot. Like WA is not the poorer sister of MMA anymore, like it used. I think that's what puts the fire in the bellies of the lads over here, is that they've always thought people look down on them a little bit over in WA, in all sports, I think. Yeah. So I think it fires them up. They get that little like WA siege mentality, and yeah, it's nice to go on the big stage and prove that little old WA can produce some talent.
And look, it could be something to do with how far away you are from the rest of the country. You know, everywhere else in the country you can travel to pretty cheaply and pretty quickly. You know, so there's plenty of opportunities and plenty of sports, not just in combat sports, in all sports, and major tournaments, etc., all over the rest of the country. But Perth seems to get a little bit left out from time to time. Yeah,
it does. And it's unfair, but there you go. So's life, you know. So.
Well, that's how it's hit an hour there.
But there you go.
Maybe more. There's a lot more in this one, I reckon.
Yeah, probably.
I reckon
you know me, I can fucking talk all day, so.
It's usually me you're telling to shut up, but
it's getting dark over here.
I have to tell you to shut up just now. Just seen a text message from Robin that her car won't start, so I'm going to have to go and do some dad duties.
Well, I've got kids to bathe and dinner to have, so good job we didn't get into any of the nitty gritty. You know, I saved.
Well, I think that's pretty good. You know, that's us both basically brought our stories kind of up to date with getting involved with Eternal, and you know, it just gives us another chapter to move on with. You know, a few podcasts down the line, we'll get a few more guests in, so people can listen to somebody other than us for a while, and then we'll maybe go back and cover some more of the early days. Yeah,
we got some stories, haven't we, mate?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I'm too keen to. I don't know if I'm too keen to tell all of them.
No, I don't think some of them are for retelling until the book comes out. But
yeah. It's quite funny. I was talking to a couple of mates last night on Messenger on Facebook, and one of them had said they'd been listening to the podcast and whatnot, and I says, "Oh, there's one coming up that it's just about me." Basically, before I said, my partner kept pushing me about stories for back in Scotland, and they were like, "Fuck! I wish he'd asked me. We've got some stories." Well, that's maybe why I'm never going to get asked.
Yeah, that's it. Leave them off. We don't want the real truth getting out there.
No, we'll just keep with the light-hearted stories.
The PG version, yeah. Let's you know,
yeah,
the world.
There is plenty of funny little anecdotes.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's why we do it, right? What I've realised, without getting too deep, is there's no real perfect purpose to life other than the memories you make along the way, because all you do is fucking cark it at the end of the day. So you might as well have fun while you're doing it, and I think that's what we do. We do, and that's why we crack on, because we have a lot of fucking fun doing what we do.
Yeah,
and we don't have any right to, because it's fucking miserable most of the time.
Yeah,
but
no, because I'm starting to realise quite topically over the last few weeks, I really should put more time into the things that I'm actually good at, rather than trying to do things that I'm no fucking interested in doing.
Yeah, that's it, and then that's what I've managed to. You know, I've made a life doing it. Like, to finish, I guess, the perfect way to close this out, I get to fucking do what I love every single fucking day. Never in my life do I wake up and go, I don't want to go to work today. I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't feel like that ever. I love my job. I love my gym. I love fight shows. I love the sport. I'm fucking all in, mate. I am, much to the annoyance of the family that I neglect. So it's been really good to have a couple of months at home, and I've got young kids, to see them and get to know them a bit better. Yeah. It sounds terrible to say as a father, but there's a purpose, and I'm doing it for them in the long run. But I also,
and what also does is it reaffirms how much you actually love this sport, because when you don't have it for a couple of months, since 2011, this is the longest break I've had from running shows. It's getting to that stage just now where it's like, fuck,
Yeah, no, definitely. So I feel very grateful, and I'd like to thank everyone that's enabled me to be able to do that, and all the fighters and the coaches and the people that help us, and for helping us live our dream, because I literally think I'm living the dream.
Without a doubt. Look, we're going to have to put the ticket prices up just to cover your electricity bill.
It's dark. I'm outside, mate.
The sun's went down on you out there, and obviously he's a rationing that electricity. But, yeah, look, that's a good way to wrap this one up, and I think that gave people quite a good insight into your background.
Sweet. All right, mate. Well, I will. No doubt, I'll speak to you tomorrow.
Speak to you later. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.